Hi, Padraig Harrington here. Welcome to Paddy's Golf Tips. Tonight we're going to focus on the grip. Probably the hardest thing in golf, but you've got to get it right if you want to improve. Essentially, a bad grip will always end up in a bad swing. A good grip makes life a lot easier and makes the golf swing pretty simple. So if you have an unorthodox grip, none of the coaching you see online, none of the coaching you read in magazines is going to apply to you. You're going to have an individual coach, and it's probably quite likely you're never really going to improve as a player with a bad grip. With a good grip, life gets easy, but it is really difficult to get that grip right, especially at the start, or even for somebody who's playing a year or two. It's really tough to break those habits, but we're going to talk about that tonight.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Padraig Harrington.
Okay, so what really is a good grip? I'm going to come in here. So essentially, over the years we've talked about grips, and people will say it's about getting the V's pointing to the shoulders, and that will look like a pretty standard grip. But if we break it down to the left hand and the right hand, two separate entities when it comes to the grip. Okay, now my left hand here, if we look at it, I have it much further down in the fingers. Actually, most pros will have it much further down than the fingers, where a lot of amateurs with a bad grip will tend to grip it much higher up in the pad of their hand, right up here. Now, if you grip it like this, the club will easily twist if you're in the rough, will easily twist if you miss-hit it, and you'll have to hold on and strangle that club as much as you can when you're swinging. Whereas if you grip it down in the fingers, it's going to hinge a lot nicer. It's going to be able to have flexibility and movement. It doesn't twist. If I try and twist it, it's not going to twist. It's not going to pull out of my hand if it's pulling away from me. It's in a good, strong position. And I don't have to strangle the club. I just have a nice grip on it. It's the same grip you would use if you picked up a suitcase or any handle. If you picked up a hammer, if you went to take a door handle, you would always grab with your fingers first. So when you want to learn the grip, this is how you do it. You actually start with your fingers are the first thing to touch the club. So you grip with the three fingers. These two don't count for this moment. Right across the three fingers. And you've got to be able to hold it against the pad of your hand, underneath the pad of your hand actually. So I can hold it there, one finger underneath that pad, and I grip with the other two like that. I do not, so it's three fingers, and then the pad wraps down on top of it like so. So remember, always put the three fingers on and then wrap your pad down on top of it. Lastly, your thumb and forefinger go on. Now the thumb, I'm not too fussed here. If you look at this, you will see pros with a weak grip, so their thumb is like essentially on top and you can see 1.5 knuckles. And you will see some pros with a strong grip. That's all personal preference. And if you're a short hitter, if you're not carrying the ball 200 yards in the air, I definitely think you should be using the stronger grip like this, because a hook is really not coming into your game. So a good strong grip for a weaker player is important. For a good player, a neutral grip, 2.5 knuckles sort of thing. If it's comfortable, 1 knuckle, fine. That's the way you want to go about it. But the key here is, if you gripped it down in these fingers here, like so, you're going to have the ability for your wrist to be able to move. And remember, this is the only thing that contacts the club at the end, your hands, and it's the last lever. So if I stand back here and swing, watch what happens. When I have the club in my fingers like so, when I go to hinge, my arm straightens, so I can get a nice distance. The further that lever away is, obviously the more powerful in that situation. If I go for a palm grip, which wears a hole in your glove, if you see that, if I go for a palm grip, if I try and lift the club or hinge the club in the backswing, the elbow does the work. Finger grip, I'm going to lock it out there. Palm grip, I'm going to have this elbow bending, which is obviously, it's not the lever we want to use. It is a lever and can add power, but it's not really what we want to use. We want to use this one as much as we can. So it's got to be in those fingers. Grip, one finger or all three, then the pad of the hand, then the thumb and forefinger. Now we've got a good left hand on that can operate nicely, can flick that back and forth, and it's never slipping out. Now, as I said, when you go watch professional golf, you will see weak and strong left hands, but there is a huge commonality on the tour with the right hand. Nearly everybody on the tour has a very good right hand grip. As I said earlier, if you have an unorthodox grip, your 100% is going to dictate how you swing the golf club, and you're basically, an unorthodox grip is going to lead to an unorthodox swing. Let's face it, a bad grip is going to lead to a bad swing. I hate to be harsh, but if you've got a bad grip and you want to improve, you'd be better off giving up the game, because you're not going to improve. If you're playing once every 3 months and you have a bad grip, don't bother changing, it's not worth the effort. But if you're playing every week, you're out there trying to improve, you need to change this grip. So we've got the left hand on, but the right hand is every bit as important. So what happens with the right hand? Very similar. It's about getting it in your fingers of the right hand. So essentially, once my left hand is on there, I will grip my 2 middle fingers, like so. So those fingers go on first, and you can see it's right down in my fingers there. Then the pinky finger goes on. For me, it goes on top. Again, some people go baseball style. Baseball is fine if you want speed, if you're slightly shorter, if you're getting to this stage. Again, I kind of look at this. If you're carrying the ball less than 200 yards, a baseball grip could be the grip for you. Okay, it's easier, it's more comfortable, no problem. If you're a bigger hitter, you want to get your hands closer together. Okay, so that's the one I use, the overlapping, the Harry Vardon. There is a kind of half overlapping, and then there's the Jack Nicklaus grip with the interlocking grip. It's up to you to choose that, whichever one you feel comfortable with. As I said, I've gone with this one, but the main thing is in my fingers. Now watch, if I get it in my fingers, the next thing that happens is I press the underneath there, under this thumb pad of this thing, I press it on my thumb. So when I'm there, 2 fingers, 3rd finger goes on. This presses hard because we never want these to separate. I'm pressing in there. Now the reason that has to be, as I said, because we don't want the club to be able to twist. We don't mind our hands and arms twisting, but we don't want the club to be able to twist or be pulled out of our hands. And you don't have to grip it tightly if you get your hands in the right place. So I press that on, and then the forefinger and thumb goes on. You will see how much that is on top. It's like I'm shaking hands with the club. Now there's a good reason for that position. The grip, the right hand extends the furthest from your body when you're swinging. Okay, so the furthest part away from you is your right hand. So that is taking all the centrifugal force. It's trying to square the place up. It's taking all the pressure because it's furthest away from you. Which you see with a lot of beginners and people who struggle, if your right hand is under, that's great for a couple of swings and it will work in the first week or two. But you're looking at a life of misery in golf. Okay, if you hit the ball 120 yards in the air, fine. But if you're going to hit the ball a good distance, what happens if your grip is turned over here? It's at its strongest when it's shaking hands, when it's picking something up. You would never pick something up, you grab it like this. So the same with the club. So when you come in, if your grip starts strong, when you come in, it will come to its strongest position, which would be shut. And of course, you wouldn't want it that shut, you'd be hitting it left. So you have to make a compensation. And this is what I said earlier, you'll start doing silly things. If you have an unorthodox grip, you're going to have a bad golf swing. That's just the fact of it. So we want to get it in the fingers, those 2 fingers, then the little finger, press that pad on. The last 2 things, like on the left hand, the last fingers to go on are your thumb and forefinger. Your thumb goes slightly more over than your left thumb, is just a fraction over to the right. Your right thumb is more over like that. So the V is pointing, it's pointing up to your shoulder at the strongest, no further right than that, or up somewhere between your shoulder and chin as I would have it. That is where I feel absolutely at my strongest. Now, there's a couple of things to know if you've got a good grip, and it is difficult to change it. You should be able to swing back and forth without the club moving position. So if you start with your grip there, you should be able to swing back and forth. Okay, after you've done that a few times, you next go to, can you hit a few chip shots in a row? Just chip a few balls back and forth without your grip loosening or changing position. And you build that up to a full swing. You should be able to hit 2 or 3 shots in a row without your hands changing position on the club face. That is a quality grip. And you don't have to strangle the club to do it. You have to have a nice... People used to ask, you know, how much tension is there in your grip when you're gripping the club? I've never really thought about it. So I don't grip it tight and I don't grip it light. They said years ago you grip it like you were picking up a little budgie in your hand, a little bird or something like that. You wouldn't squeeze it to death. But the reality is you just hold it normal, natural. Don't worry too much about it. But if your hands are in the right place, at impact, you will have tension there that will hold the club face square, especially if you're going through the rough. So you've got to be able to hit 1 or 2 or 3 shots, well, obviously more than one, say 2 or 3 shots in a row where your grip doesn't change, stays in position, then you know you have a good grip. So if you want to change it, probably start off doing it, you know, sit in front of the TV and just continually move your hands around and make sure that your fingers are not changing position, that your hands aren't moving, that the club is moving but your hands is staying nicely in the same place. Then progress to hitting a few chip shots, then progress to a few short shots, and then to the longer shots. Normally what happens when you change the right hand, especially from this strong position over on top of the club, is you start hitting slices, which obviously most amateurs don't like. So that's why you should start with chip shots and things like that. But if you jump straight into the long shots and you've weakened your grip, I personally would practice with the ball slightly above my feet. So that gives me, so if I was hitting off an angle where the ball is up above my feet, that's going to make me draw the ball and hook the ball, which will compensate for a weaker grip. It will help you get used to it quicker, because it really is hard to change that grip. But again, it's the one thing in golf that connects you to the club face. Get your grip wrong at your peril. You will absolutely stagnate as a golfer if you don't have a good grip. You cannot really advance. And certainly all the coaching, all these videos you'll find on YouTube and other outlets only apply to somebody who's got an orthodox grip. Okay, so it's worth your time. If you want to improve, change your grip. Get it in the fingers, very simple. Fingers of the left hand. 3 fingers, hold it like so. 2 fingers on. Fingers of the right hand, 2 fingers, like so. I'll do that from this end. So 3 fingers, then the pad, then these fingers, then these 2, then that finger, and then that pressing feeling. Press down, that gives you that power and the grip. Okay, you can relax it when you're swinging, and you've got to be able to move it around. You've got to have that flexibility in your wrists. Believe it or not, in order for them to function correctly, they've got to be quite mobile. If they're not mobile, if you lock it up here, something else, the next joint, if you lock up your wrist, the next joint is what's going to be mobile, and you don't want your elbow to be mobile in the swing. So definitely, maybe the hardest thing to work on in the golf game is the grip, but it's definitely worth it. If you want to improve as a player, you've got to work on that grip.